OTA's getting going. We get to see Trey Lance's brand new mechanics. How different should they be? What is actually there to work on for Trey Lance? And what about expectations for Brock Purdy post-surgery with our quarterback expert, Greg Panelli, on today's Locked On 49ers.
You are Locked On 49ers, your daily San Francisco 49ers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On 49ers. Brian Peacock and Eric Crocker, as always, at BD Peacock, at Eric_Crocker. Thanks, everybody, for making us your first listen on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And we've got a very special guest on today's show to kind of help us wade through some of the conversations that are happening out there about quarterbacks and throwing and what it all means. We got a guy, Greg Panelli, at Greg Panelli on Twitter. If you're in the Central Valley area or you can travel anywhere near the Central Valley area, he's your guy. If you got a young quarterback that needs to work on throwing the football, Greg Panelli Passing Academy is your guy. And Greg, thank you so much for jumping on the show with us today and maybe speaking with some knowledge about what it's like to train a quarterback, what it's like to throw a football, and what we're talking about as it pertains to some of these mechanical changes for young Trey Lance.
Absolutely. I appreciate you guys having me on. It's been a while.
I have a lot of questions. So just about all these things that are going on with the quarterback position. Obviously, a lot surrounding Trey Lance, his finger. How much did that affect you? And they talked about he started to develop some bad habits. So can we start there?
With the finger? Look, because it's really quick. It feels like with Trey Lance, there's just something new every time. We're like, wait, what is that? The finger was hurt for 18 months? What are we talking about now? Then next year in the offseason, we'll be like, oh, yeah, we found out in 2023 that Trey Lance is actually left-handed. So now we're going to start there instead. It's like, dude, there's something new every single time. Like, this is the weirdest quarterback development in the history of the NFL.
It honestly is. And you know, I'm trying to think, like, when did the finger thing come into play in all reality?
Okay, so it was training camp or preseason his rookie year. He hit his hand on somebody's helmet at the end of the game, and he broke or fractured his finger or whatever was his pointing finger. So from there, just to kind of get through, he changed the grip on the way that he threw the football.
That's right.
And that's the part I want to get to you and know more about. But he changed it for the rest of that year. And then the whole offseason, he was trying to work to get his grip back to normal.
Right.
Because somehow it healed and they said it didn't heal correct, like his finger. I don't know if it's because he kept trying to throw on it or whatever, but it didn't heal quite correctly. So then it's like, okay, I got to get my finger back right. I have to try to relearn how to throw my original way because I developed this bad habit. And then it kind of carried over into his year two. So how significant is that? Having that, like, first of all, a finger where now I have to change my grip on how I throw a football and then having to relearn how you originally threw the football.
What finger was it again?
Pointer finger.
Pointer. So for starters, I don't know if I remember telling you guys this, but I broke my index finger on my throwing hand. I broke these three at different points playing football. And then I broke my index finger in October. I knew it was broken as soon as it happened. I had my hand on the car door. Daughter slammed the car door because she's wanting to push everything. 2 years old, boom. Right when the door slammed on it, I already knew. It felt like just like these three. So it took, I would say, probably 3.5, 4 weeks before I really felt like I could throw a football again. But I would say after, 6 weeks, I felt like ready. It was completely fine, no issues. And that was my index finger. Then I did my middle finger, when I was playing high school ball. And then I did these two playing college football on the back of a guard's helmet. And like I said, it was about a month total in recovery before I felt like I really could kind of get into driving the football again. So to say that it took 18 months, something must have happened at some point or another where it just wasn't healing, or there was some fracture still going on. Something was going on with the bone. I don't know, but I would like to think that, changing the throwing motion for somebody at his level, in my opinion, shouldn't be that hard as far as the grip goes. Because let's say you're doing quick game, RPOs, quick game, gun snaps, there's a lot of times where you're not necessarily throwing with your hand directly on the laces, where you might just, take a shotgun snap, grip the ball where it feels comfortable for you to throw the ball, and you're getting it out anyways. You're never going to really have that comfortable grip on the football unless, it's 3-step drops or, routes that are over 10 yards, 5-step drops under center, whatever. But I wouldn't think that it would be that hard. I feel like if I could change my grip from how I threw it my whole life to how I teach it these days and how most guys throw, where the ring finger, my right ring finger is on the second lace down, and then the pinky slightly off, and then these two are on the top of the ball. In high school and growing up, and then even in college, I had my middle finger on the top lace, and then this one on the third lace down, and I've switched it, and I can throw both ways now. So I would like to think that an NFL quarterback would be able to throw multiple ways with his hands on the laces, and it shouldn't take more than probably a couple of weeks to a month maybe to get used to that. Gotcha. Especially how much they throw.
You know what else is interesting about the timeline too with the finger injury and not really knowing the extent of it back then was that, does that change how he was used in that Arizona game? Remember when he ran the ball like 16 times?
That's what I was going to say. That was like the one injury that I remember, is because, and we had talked about that right after the game, and it was like this huge debate of, well, we have Trey Lance that we drafted, but now we're not giving him the same offense that Jimmy Garoppolo is getting to run, and it's completely different, and we're never going to get to see what this guy truly looks like. And it was like watching a college offense all over again. So maybe you're right. Maybe he wasn't able to air it. I haven't really gone back and watched that tape and how he was throwing the ball. I don't know if anybody has insight on that, but that was a very weird playbook per se, I guess, that game in comparison to others.
And it definitely did look a lot different against the Texans later on in the season, where it seemed like maybe it was healed up at that point. And I don't know if it was actually still a problem going into the next offseason or not, but there was so much talk about a dead arm period. And I think we have talked about that before, about the dead arm stuff. Greg, by the way, Christian in the live chat says, "Hey, Croc and Peacock, excited catching you live once. It's 2 a.m. here. Sleepless. Love listening to you guys in Austria. Love that. So appreciate the worldwide audience for Locked On 49ers here. Greg, have you ever dealt with dead arm periods or quarterbacks that run into sort of a dead arm period? And if you change your throwing motion, could that be part of it? Or, because we've heard conflicting reports now about Trey Lance having a dead arm for various reasons. And this quarterback coach, Christensen, who works with Patrick Mahomes, I feel like there is a little bit of like all these different quarterback coaches. And like, this is your genre, Greg. Like, this is your industry with, coaching up quarterbacks. I feel like some of them do really kind of want to take credit for like fixing a guy. And it's like, so did you fix his motion and that's why he had the dead arm, or did he have the dead arm because he threw so much trying to prep for the draft? Which is it? It's wild. Could bad mechanics really cause that much of a problem for a quarterback's arms? I know it can for a baseball pitcher, but it was very different deliveries.
Yeah, I would say so. There's different age groups where you're dealing with certain things arm-wise. For the younger guys, it seems like, and when I say younger, I'm talking, middle schoolers to some of the high school guys, some of the elbow pain stuff, right? We're dealing with trying to change the mechanics for the better. They show up day one, day two, or the first or second, third, fourth, however many sessions until they understand it. And we're trying to change mechanics, but really, once you get to the older guys, it just all depends on pitch count. Like, I don't know what his pitch count, when I say pitch count, how many balls he was throwing every single day. Not with Christensen. I saw that they were talking about 150-ish balls or something like that per day.
Is that normal, or is that?
I mean, between a warm-up, you got to understand, like, between a warm-up, which you've seen me do at Croc, where we're staying on the line and you got 2 feet square and you're kind of just, it's an 8-yard throw and you're going to do 5 or 6 of them, and you're going to stagger your feet and throw without your feet underneath you. both, that's 15 throws, 5 on your right foot forward, 5 with your left, and then we'll turn sideways, and we'll do some crossover steps and retreat steps. So you're already up to 35, 40 throws, plus probably doing some weighted ball stuff or with plyo balls, and you're going to do some of those throws for 15, 20 minutes, doing some just, excuse me, some ghost throws, or I call them ghost throws, where you're not actually throwing the ball, but you're holding a weighted ball in your hand and you're going through a full motion, trying to work on little meticulous things, getting your front foot down, whether it's the base, the foot strike, the arm path, or being fluid, getting the elbow through, arm angles. There's a bunch of different things, but some of the stuff that we see with the older guys, especially at the facility here, when they have arm issues, it's typically not necessarily the arm, but there's deficiencies in other part of the body, whether that be obliques, right? So the oblique is an important muscle for the deceleration process in the throwing motion. So if you throw a football and you didn't have, what am I saying? Obliques? Did I say obliques?
Yeah.
Yeah, not your obliques. Your lats here. If you are throwing without a lat, what's going to stop the arm from moving, right? So your lats are obviously important. Then there's bicep, there's tricep, there's forearm stiffness, there's, even into your ribs. If your first rib's out of place, you're going to have some sort of soreness. If you have a tight core, tight hips, tight hips usually leads to the front leg locking a little bit too soon, or locking and you stepping into your toe and then stopping that rotation for a split second. So there's a bunch of different things that can play into it. For Trey, I always felt like his front step was a bit too long. And the reason why I think it tied into the front step being too long and the lift of basically raising the ball and then trying to tie in his front foot. So he would step, stride, and then the ball would go up and back. And then I felt like that stride was a little bit too long. It was the same thing that Quincy said last year. Quincy Avery, who obviously worked with Trey during his draft prep and prior to that. And then it was the same thing with the Tom House last year with the 3D QB guys. They were trying to work on his front step. And then now he's with Christensen, and they didn't say exactly what he was working on. But I also felt like in watching Trey over and over and listening and talking amongst other quarterback coaches out there across the country, that they all kind of felt the same way as far as the foot strike. If you can get the foot strike down quicker, the hands have to be faster, right? So then you're going to be in sequence where the foot strikes. The ball should be kind of right here by the time your front foot hits the ground, the ball should be kind of in this, we call it like a flatter L position, where it's going back, and then the right hip would fire for a righty. So the right hip fires, and as that right hip fires, that's what's going to bring the arm through and rotation, therefore transferring the weight into your front foot. And so if your stride is too long, you'll get past this position here into this position, and then the hips and the arms essentially fire at the same time, which is going to put more pressure on your arm, which in turn is probably going to turn into sore arm or shoulder pain, rear delt pain. Doesn't matter where, it could be anywhere, depending, like I said, on the deficiency. So usually it ties into the mechanics and the sequencing of the mechanics on why you're having pain in different areas of the arm.
Okay, I want to get a little bit deeper on that and talk about the upper body versus the lower body with the throwing mechanics. What can we expect from Trey Lance? What can we expect from Brock Purdy and your evaluation of Brock Purdy as a rookie? Because there's seems to be some Brock Purdy wars happening all of a sudden amongst everybody.
He's a dink and dunker
in the 49ers land. Yeah, dink and dunk is the word of the week so far on 49ers Twitter. All right, so more with Greg Panelli, Panelli Passing Academy, and getting a little I like this, getting a little information about throwing mechanics for some of these big time quarterbacks. We'll keep it going next. Today's episode of Locked On 49ers is brought to you by FanDuel. Make a fast break to FanDuel during the NBA playoffs, because right now new customers get a no sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's $1,000 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. There's no better place to bet all the playoff action than America's #1 sportsbook. If you're a Warriors fan and you're enjoying the demise, maybe you can even put a little money on maybe the Lakers getting swept out of the playoffs. You can put a little money on any of those playoff teams in the NBA. You can put a little money on any of the NHL playoffs, or how about Major League Baseball all summer long? And of course, NFL futures are right there ready for you. Coach of the year, player of the year, which team will win the Super Bowl? San Francisco 49ers odds to win the Super Bowl at FanDuel. So just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get a no sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. So, Greg, as it pertains to this throwing motion, so it sounds like when you see when you've watched rookie year Trey Lance, you've seen North Dakota State Trey Lance, you've seen year 2 Trey Lance, and then you've seen like some clips here in the offseason of Trey Lance. Can you see anything different, or do you think that everything we're talking about with throwing motion isn't so much the ball coming out of his hands necessarily, but it's that lower half?
I think that his mechanics have looked very similar over the last 4 years, 3 years, whatever it's been so far. I can't see a ton of changes. It could be the timing and the wrist position at the top, or trying to keep that elbow tied in with the point of the ball. But they said they worked on the front foot strike, and I guess that was the biggest thing, is maybe his feet did look a little bit quicker last year, or the ball started to come out a little bit quicker. But again, we didn't get to see enough of it, right? And there's only so much we're going to see from training camp, and there's only so many times where you're going to see it in a game. And in a game, it's tough. It really is, because you can prep a quarterback. We can work on things continuously in an off season and at practice, and do things over and over. But once a game hits, that stuff has to become automatic, right? Like, you're not thinking anymore in the midst of your 5-step drop and you're getting ready to throw a deep dig that you need to get your front foot down quicker and be wide with that stuff doesn't apply anymore, right? You should have repped it enough to where hopefully that becomes natural, and that is muscle memory. So a lot of the stuff, I shouldn't say it goes out the window, but it should be just become a muscle memory thing. And the guys are going to play at the end of the day. There's plenty of clips that you'll see of Patrick Mahomes with wide feet, right? There's a couple of them where he's going to miss when he has an extra wide step on his initial foot strike. There's going to be some where he's got his feet underneath him and he still might miss. Like, you're playing football at the end of the day. Nobody's going to be perfect throwing the football, but it's trying to eliminate those errors in between. And, what you want at the end of the day is guys to be comfortable and guys to be natural, regardless if it looks or it's supposed, or it looks how it's supposed to look, and that how it's supposed to look is depending on who you're really asking, right? At the end of the day. But if a guy's comfortable throwing a football, my job as a quarterback coach is not to completely change somebody's mechanics to something that isn't comfortable and make them a robot. It's to take what they do well and try and revise little things or build upon what they already have. And I think that's really what they're trying to do. You're not going to see huge dramatic changes. Like Trey Lance isn't going to have a snappy, quick release like Jimmy G, because they're two different types of throwers. It's just not going to happen. It's the same with Josh. You might have quick hands, but it's not going to be as compact. Tom Brady's is very compact, right? Drew Brees' was pretty compact. Peyton Manning's was very compact. But Trey Lance is a little bit different. Like that, his mechanics, Pat Mahomes is longer. It's not saying they don't have quick hands, but their take back is a little bit longer or exaggerated. And I think a lot of that comes from the dual sport stuff, the baseball backgrounds. And it's good because they end up having a ton of whip when they throw the football, and that's how they create a lot of velocity. I wouldn't expect a ton of things to change with Trey's mechanics, regardless of who he's working with. He's at the point now where, what is he, 23, 24? I don't even know how old.
He just turned 23 like a couple weeks ago. 23
years old. If this was 13 years old, I would say, hey, let's watch the before and after clips, and you're going to really be able to see. He's 23 years old. There's going to be little fine-tuning and minuscule things that are going to be worked on every offseason, but to think that he's just going to turn into a completely different thrower, I think would be crazy to think that.
Last question on Trey Lance. Let's say you're trying to work on different things. You talked about muscle memory. How long does that process take, right? Because I remember Aaron Rodgers in college, and he used to hold the ball by his face
It
mask.
was right here. It was like up on
Yeah.
what they call the shelf, right? And so it's up here, and that's something that Coach Tedford has taught a lot. And I deal with obviously working with the Fresno State quarterbacks, and he still wants some of them to be more here. And there's a lot of college coaches that actually want that, believe it or not. And it sounds crazy because their philosophy is that it's quicker, right? I had to do it in college. There's a video clip. So my old head coach from Eastern Washington is the offensive coordinator at Arizona State now. And he had sent a clip of me throwing like pre-practice or whatever it was when they were trying to break down mechanics back in the day. And I'm holding the ball up here on the shelf. Well, I had a longer release, so it looked longer, but they were trying to shorten it. And the quick fix is just put the ball up here. You're going to shorten it. And so he had texted me and Danny, my boy that trains QBs down in SoCal, and had said, I don't know who the hell was teaching you guys this stuff back in the day. And it was him and our quarterback coach, but it doesn't look natural. And they finally realized that that's not a natural throwing motion. And just because it's quicker doesn't mean that you're going to create as much power, right? That's why Aaron Rodgers obviously no longer holds the ball right here. That's not necessarily the most efficient way. And there's a ton of young kids that will end up showing up and they hold the ball here, or their first move is pushing the ball up. And I understand why they would push the ball up. Youngsters will push the ball up because their hand is not big enough to hold the ball when they do this. So they'll push it up and kind of lift it and then almost shove it, or like throwing a dart instead of actually being able to create some whip. So, Trey's is longer, and some people might say it's too long, but as long as you have hand speed that makes up for it, I think you're going to be all right.
How big of a difference do you think the elongated release makes for, especially like quick game stuff and just getting the ball out on time? Is that like, it's not even half a step worth, but there's enough worth that a defender has that extra millisecond to just maybe break on a ball and see the ball coming. I think of, Trey Lance was a big one, but I think of Justin Fields too coming out and, he's had that baseball delivery and he was a baseball
Trevor
player.
Lawrence too.
And Trevor Lawrence, and it takes a little while. And, the longer you are, the taller you are, the more, just arm length you have to flop around and throw the football. And it can help for throwing the heck out of the ball, but can also make it a little bit longer. And so is that something that you worry about if you see it as like, well, it's just too long, so you can never be great because it's too long and it takes too long.
I think that's the thinking of some of the quarterback coaches around the country, or that has been the thought process. So like I said, half of them have adapted. And I see it a lot in the recruiting process. And then my guys will get recruited for the way that they throw and how well they do. And they watch them throw live, or they throw at camps and they get scholarship offers. And then they end up going to colleges. And as soon as they get to college, the quarterback coach tries to change where their ball carriage is because they want them to hold the ball here. Well, my rebuttal to this is like, you offered a kid a full scholarship and you did it because you like the way he throws. But now you're trying to change it for something that you want to see. So what is that? Doesn't mean to me it doesn't make sense.
Why'd you draft the guy that can't throw the ball the way you want to?
Exactly. So why did you take him anyways if you don't like the way he throws currently? So you want to change it. Now, going into your question, there's different mechanics, I would say, and most guys will see that. Or know how to do it. There's different mechanics depending on different situations. Like an RPO game is going to be a lot quicker. You're not going to necessarily have a good grip on the football with the laces. Now, most of these guys have big enough hands where they can figure out a way to obviously throw it anyways. And once you get to high school, you'll kind of figure out throwing without the laces. But it turns into almost wet ball mechanics. I would call it wet ball mechanics, and quick game mechanics would be very similar. It doesn't need to be as long. You can catch, do your fake, and almost kind of lift it, and you're throwing with your arm because it's a 10-yard throw max, right? Or a 15-yard throw. You should be able to throw without your feet underneath you, or with just your upper half, or even if you flipped your upper half or your feet too, you can get the ball to about right here. And it doesn't have to be this elongated motion. And I think that was one of the things at the Texans game, right? I was watching Trey, and he missed like a flat route to use check or something like that. And it was longer, and he was a little bit longer on his slants. So that would be something I think I would try and work on with Trey, would be the quick game stuff. How fast can you get the ball? And obviously that's why Jimmy accelerated in the quick game, and it was so successful. Although there was some ballsy throws, plenty of them, but his release was so snappy and so quick. He had some of the quickest hands in the league, and it's tough to defend when you're playing. I mean, Crocker can tell you, when somebody gives you a stab step to the outside, or, arc release, and then they're back inside and the ball's on them, on their face right now, as a DB, that's so hard to defend, because, in most cases, or like even in the college game, usually there's a step or two more that he can take to get right back to his hip and maybe get his hand in front, or some recovery that Crocker might be able to make as a DB. But Jimmy did such a good job of being able to get the ball out quick. It almost seemed too quick sometimes. And I think that would be something I would work on Trey with, is just the quick game mechanics, being able to shorten it and make sure it's a little bit more compact. It doesn't have to be as long. It doesn't need to be as hot of a throw as it would be, throwing a dig or out routes, or something downfield a little bit more.
Yeah, when it comes to Croc too, and recovering, you got to have recovery speed to be able to recover. So
you got to have good technique. You got to have good technique if you're going to lack the speed. Crocker was always pretty solid on the technique, and I think that's probably why he's a good teacher of DBs. He wasn't
earlier in the chat said Crocker. It's fine again. Yeah, Crocker is a Stockton goat, and I wish you guys would have heard the conversation off the air, getting Greg and Croc on, former teammates at Modesto Junior College, chatting it up about their time there. It was a lot of fun.
Always.
All right, I want to move the conversation along here to Brock Purdy. What you saw from Brock as a rookie, what our expectations are here, and with him coming off of that elbow surgery next. Thank you once again, everybody, for making Locked On 49ers your first listen every day here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Make sure you are subscribed up on YouTube and everywhere you get your podcasts. And check out the Peacock and Williamson NFL show daily as well, right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, talking about the entire league and tons of other great content at Locked On. All right, so Croc went away for a second. He's back though, changing his Wi-Fi, and I still see the Lakers jersey in the background, which I don't like. So that's better for those of you who are only listening and not watching us on YouTube. Love having Greg Panelli Passing Academy on the show. You heard him talk about Josh earlier. That's Josh Allen. How much credit do you take for Josh Allen's career, Greg? Because I hear some of these quarterback coaches, and this. Let's see if I can find it in the chat. Emiliano says Christensen sounded like he was selling his services in that interview, and I hear some other quarterbacks coaches. And then look, you've got to sell yourself when you're a quarterbacks coach. But I don't know how much credit you can take. I don't know what takes 4 days to figure out looking at a player's mechanics. I don't even know what goes into some of these quarterbacks and their coaching. I will say though, I did see your work with Croc at his quarterback pro day last year. So I got no problem sending my kid to Greg Panelli and the Panelli Passing Academy.
I would definitely take, excuse me, I would definitely take credit for Crocker's, because when Crocker showed up, it was such a mess anyways, that there was plenty that needed to be worked on. It was only up. Exactly. There was no going down. Taking credit for guys like, Josh, there's Jay Kana, there's Bray. Like, I fixed, some things with Bray back when he was playing, and it was keeping his foot a little bit more connected through the release. But Josh working on shoulder height a little bit more, balance, and really getting himself set up a little bit better at the top. But to say taking credit, I'm not the one that's out there throwing the damn football on Sundays or Saturdays when they were in college, Friday nights when Josh was in high school. It's like I said, it's those guys have to, I can give them the keys to the Ferrari, but they got to go drive it anyways. Right. So it's the taking the credit stuff, like those can be your boys. Right. And you could show them everything. But at the end of the day, they have to be the ones that go utilize the teachings. And they're obviously in the NFL because they're elite at what they do. And, it's not completely revamping the things that those guys do. It's, as I said earlier, it's taking bits and pieces of what they do well and some things that they might not, and try and add little things in there that might help them, little cues, little training mechanisms that might make them just 1% better, right? And if we can help them do that, then great. If not, they're still going to go play anyways, and they're going to go be natural athletes. So, to take credit for those guys, there is, I think you would be a little bit crazy. And I get you do. Go ahead, Croc.
Well, I was going to say, you talk about the little things, right? And I know I had a lot to work on. And, we had a lot of fun that day. But one thing I remember you saying specifically, you're like, hey, lock your wrist this way and kind of turn your hand this way, and you'll be able to throw with like more velocity and the spin to be tighter. And I did that one little thing he said, and all of a sudden the ball is like flying out of my hand different. I'm like, what the heck? I'm looking at my hand. I'm looking at him like, damn, this is crazy. But just the smallest of changes and how much that can change your throw. It was fun going through it because I could see now just how easy or difficult it is trying to throw a football a certain way while being accurate, with the little changes that are needed. And then what some of these guys that we take for granted with Jimmy Garoppolo and his release and how quick and how, accurate he can be on some of these short to intermediate throws. But I feel like those were the more difficult throws. Like we talk a lot about the throws down the field. Those are the easiest throws to attempt because a guy can change his course and run underneath the ball. The harder throws, and what I realized there, throwing those deep, those in breaking routes, those digs, the out routes where you can't really miss. Mm-hmm. And that's way more difficult than a flashy, ball that, travels 55 yards in the air.
And I've always told people that, that's the thing when I get highlight tapes. I get highlight tapes all the time, and kids across the country will send highlight tapes. Like, hey, what do you think about this? Or, what can you watch my tape? Can you send this tape to college coaches? Guys that I train, they send me their tapes. And usually the first throw on everybody's highlight tape is some sort of deep ball. Almost every single time. And it gets old after a while. And I understand that in the NFL, especially from Niner fans, have been craving seeing the deep ball. But when you get a deeper appreciation for how hard it is, like Crocker said, and I've been there and done it, where you're throwing a 15, 20-yard dig in a tight space on the money, and there's a linebacker here, a DB trailing them, a safety on the far side. There's no room for error when those things happen. And so those throws are so underappreciated. And I think that's why I always thought, there's a lot of people that say that Jimmy is not a sexy thrower. People are going to say that Brock's not a sexy thrower, but they're taking, I would say, more high-risk throws, and they've executed at those high-risk throws. Versus I could take probably 20 people. Well, I don't even know how many people are in the chat, but I could take 20 people that might be watching this, okay, and say, let's go out to the field and have them throw a 40-yard ball, okay, and then take those 20 and say, I want you to throw a 20-yard dig route backside in this 5-yard window, and it's got to be on the money. There might be maybe one person, and I would doubt it, that one person would be able to do it.
I think you're also overselling how many people could even throw the ball 40 yards down the field.
I was going to say I'm probably overselling that, but there, you can walk out to a park, you go out to the beach, right? You see people throwing footballs. They're not throwing little short balls; they're just throwing the ball deep, right? You go out to a park and you watch kids throw a football around. How many of them can you see throw a deep ball? Damn near everybody can throw a deep ball. It's not hard to do, right? But then doing a deep ball with timing and a DB on it's still not that hard. But if I'm going to throw, a bang 8, which would be like a post 4th outside step in a cover 3 window that has to be over a linebacker on the money before he gets to the safety, that's a high risk throw. You miss, he's leaving on the stretcher. You miss, it's picked off. Those are so much harder than throwing deep balls. But what the hell do I know? There's a lot of people that are going to say that, the deep ball is a much cooler throw to watch. Well, I would say that sometimes it is, but it's easier to throw it and let it go. But as you know, in football games, it's a lot more, or the completion percentage on it is so much less than what you would be throwing, 15 yards and under. So it's really a high risk throw from a passing percentage or completion percentage, but it's not hard to do.
And I do think that's where a lot of people are kind of getting it wrong in talking about, there was some Jimmy G disrespect. And I think, my biggest problems with Jimmy G was throwing interceptions. And I don't know, I've started calling it the Kyle Shanahan interception even more than the Jimmy Garoppolo interception, because like you mentioned there, like Kyle Shanahan's offense is what I call aggressively intermediate. Like he puts a lot of throws in the same part of the field. The defense knows those throws are coming too. And so the robber safety can get you. And I was impressed with Brock's ability to not throw that many interceptions. And, maybe some were dropped. But I think as far as the dink and dunk conversation that's happening here, the 49ers are aggressively intermediate. So there's not going to be a lot of check down throws is what, I consider dink and dunk, because you're just kind of like easy throws. You're just dropping it off, letting your running back run. And there's a lot of catch and run stuff in the 49ers offense, but there's a lot of difficult throws that aren't deep balls necessarily, but they're difficult throws in tight windows in the intermediate and even the short areas sometimes. So that's where I think Jimmy Garoppolo excelled, and I think that's where Brock Purdy was really good as well. And and then Brock Purdy making some plays on top of that. But then you mentioned some of those other throws, the difficult throws, and you do see a lack of velocity at times. And so for me, the dink and dunk conversation is not like can he throw the ball deep, or what the yards per attempt or intended air yards are. It's, man, when you got to make this one throw, can he make it? And that's where I think the limit is on Brock Purdy. It's not so much dink and dunk. It's just like, put it on the tape. It's not that hard. You see it. You see what he does well, and you see that there's some throws that he just can't make versus some of the other best quarterbacks in the league.
Right. And so I think also I got a question for both of you guys, and then while we're on this conversation of the dink and dunkers, and I know that everybody, you see the Twitter conversations going today, and it seems like everybody's talking about it. Where is it what we see on the field? Is it the sabermetrics or the stats, the attempt air yards, whatever your argument is? There's going to be some sort of data, right, that's going to back it. And then there's going to be a ton of opinions that might go like this with the data, and you want to agree, but you don't want to agree, and you have different opinions and feelings about a certain somebody, whatever. But based off the stats that are given, and I think one of them is like attempted air yards, right? And I know there's attempted air yards versus the completion. Okay, that's fine. We can, somebody will have the numbers on that, and I'm sure it's already on there. Would you consider, or would you have considered Jimmy G? No, you can't, Chris. There's no way. Would you consider Jimmy G a dink and dunker? Based off the film.
Look, so
I didn't see him check down. So it's weird because I didn't see Jimmy check down. He just worked a certain area of the field, and that was where he excelled. So
shit, I wish he would have checked down a little bit more sometimes.
Well, but last year when the 49ers traded for Christian McCaffrey, the week before that, we did a podcast talking about how I think that would help, because the 49ers need to throw to the running backs more. Then they trade for Christian McCaffrey, and all of a sudden they run the offense through a running back. I was like, well, could the other running backs not catch at all? Like, how did it go from zero to everything? Wow,
some of them can, but we know that they're very similar to DBs, where they don't really have the greatest hands. Right. So there's no, he falls in right along in that conversation too. He's a 6'2" DB. 6'2" DB. Come on now. But anyways, going along with that, is Tom Brady a dink and dunker?
Yeah.
It started to creep that way last year. He's like, I'm 45. I need the ball out of my hands.
But it wasn't his career, right? But through his career.
Definitely not. And by the way, throws a great deep ball. And that's so one of the things that happens with the Brock Purdy conversation is like, it wasn't that he wasn't good. I just look at, if you just name any great quarterback in the league now or in the past, Brock Purdy's arm is not as good as that guy you're thinking of right now. And so that's what worries me is like, okay,
Yeah.
you don't worry. You're like, we're done. Brock Purdy's the guy. That's it. And now it's like, okay, Trent Williams retires and, Kittle gets older and ages out. And then it's like, okay, you're just going to hitch the entire team. And is he going to carry you like Patrick Mahomes does? The Chiefs, right? He just doesn't have that level of arm talent. And as good as he played and as fun as it was to watch, and maybe he does turn out to be the guy, and he is so efficient and such a playmaker everywhere else that he's the next whatever, Drew Brees or Joe Montana. That could be the possibility, but it's not about dink and dunk at all. It's just about there's some things that he can't quite do that almost every other really good NFL quarterback can do with some throws. And so that's what just gives me a little bit of pause. And I want to just wait and see before just crowning Brock Purdy as the guy.
Yeah. And I was a little surprised. Like once the dink and dunk thing came up, and I know it came up a couple weeks ago, and I was screwing around. I was like, Jimmy really is top 3. Some list came out about air yards or passing yards per attempt. And I was honestly surprised that I think I just looked it up again today, and it was like he's 3rd all time in air yards per attempt through his career. Jimmy G is 3rd all time. And I was like, what? Like what are we, and I get it. There's the completion differences, but it's like Otto Graham and Sid Luckman were ahead of him. And then it was Jimmy G.
You know why?
Pat Mahomes, but I was shocked, honestly.
You know why I think that is? Because, again, for most of his time with the 49ers, he did not check down. So everything that he threw, even though it wasn't deep, it was within 7 to 15 yards. So every one of your attempts, even though you're not throwing the ball like vertically a whole lot, and then obviously Kyle Shanahan would take shots here and there, but I think, it's clear, right? If you look at the numbers, Jimmy G took the least amount of deep shots in the NFL, but everything was 7 to 15 yards, 7 to 15 yards, 7 to 15 yards. Where other quarterbacks, even in Patrick Mahomes, you'll see jump offs to the running backs, throws to the running backs, quick out to Travis Kelce. You'll see a lot of those. And then you'll see the big ball.
One big shot that happens. Yeah.
It's not like he's throwing the big ball every single play. But Jimmy Garoppolo was very consistent with 7 to 15 yards, like every single attempt.
No, that was his money yardage for sure. Yeah. That was he was dialed. Like I said, there's not. People say anybody could make those throws. It's like, I beg to differ. Like watch on Sundays. Just because somebody else makes a bigger throw or a longer throw doesn't mean that they're necessarily making all those other ones underneath. So I thought he did a good job at those things. Those are, at the end of the day, I think that there's going to be numbers that support, and then there's going to be opinions. And they're going to crisscross every which way. And at the very end of it, you got to flip on the tape and you see what you see, right? Can player A make every single throw that you need him to make on the field? Can player B make most of the throws, but you're going to get some stuff along the way? Or player C that can make almost all of them, but runs the offense really well. And I feel like that's kind of where Brock Purdy is. Like you expect him to do most of the stuff pretty well. But he's going to run the offense how Kyle wants him to run the offense.
Have you ever seen his scouting report?
Yeah. So, and I watched some of his college tape too.
So I'm going to read Brock Purdy's scouting report and tell me if this, what this means to you. All right. And obviously, a scouting report does not mean exactly how someone's career will turn out. It just tells you what they think of the player as a prospect. All right. And then it's on them. However, whatever it says as a prospect, it's on them to go, play above that, even with maybe some of their limitations or things that they excel at. All right. But here's an overview on his on Brock Purdy and his scouting report, according to NFL.com. 4-year starter who was able to improve upon a stellar sophomore, or who was never able to improve upon a stellar sophomore campaign. Purdy is a burly pocket quarterback who needs a play-action-based offense where he can rely on timing over release quickness and arm strength. So, just that first line right there is telling you, hey, he doesn't have the biggest of arms, but if he has an offense that he can rely on play action passes, to help him be more efficient or throw to certain areas in the field, then he can be good. And to me, just right there alone, that says exactly what he's been with the 49ers. I mean, they kind of hit the nail on the head with what he's successful doing. I think, and we've talked about it, Greg, 49ers drop back passing game is maybe the weakest in the NFL, would you say? I mean, just pure drop back. We could just drop back for the ball.
Yeah, you know what? And it's, I mean, I would say it's below average at least. I don't know if it's the weakest, but it's below average probably. You know, they talk about the mile per hour thing, right? That was, Will, when we had Will on the podcast, he had talked about how they got 5 more miles an hour out of him. So he was throwing 51 miles an hour at the combine at the stupid board or the bag that has nothing to do with anything football related, right? It's just like you go to the minor league baseball game and you throw the ball as hard as you can on the radar gun, and he's like, well, can you throw a strike? So it's like, what does that really matter anyways? But it just shows, okay, the kid can whip it or he can't. And he was 51. Then you got Jake Hayner as a guy, obviously I trained, who was 59 this year, and Levis was 59 and DTR was 61. It's like, okay, that's fine. But to think that they're going to throw the ball that hard in a football game is, I would be fairly surprised how often guys would throw at 100% and really try and pump it. If you are, you probably shouldn't be throwing that route you're going to throw anyways, because you're obviously doing it to try and make up for something, whether it's timing. Now, unless you're throwing a Hail Mary, right? That's different, but you're throwing it with trajectory, not a laser 10 yards away. So it goes back to like, well, how was Peyton Manning's arm strength? I think in his early years, his arm was pretty good. Then in his later years, he had to be really good at anticipating. There's ways around it, but the problem I think that we see with Niner fans in general and what people are hungry for is they're tired of the ways around it. Let's get the answer and stick with the answer. And who's the answer currently there? Well, it's not Brock Purdy, right? Then I'm saying to the Niner fans and what they want. It's not Brock Purdy because he can't make all the throws. He went 8-0, but he can't make every single throw and rip it on the money. Trey has shown that he could do most of those things, and he has the livest arm on the roster probably, but he can't stay healthy. Then you got Sam Darnold now who's in the picture. It's like, okay, well, this is kind of like, I might get a lot of flack for this. Is he going to be the missing piece? What's going to happen? Does Brock and Trey shoot themselves in the foot and then Sam Darnold sneaks in and becomes a starter? I don't know. I don't know if what's going to happen. Does Trey stay healthy? Does Brock stay healthy? Is Brock going to return on time? So it's like, I feel like everybody wants an answer, and we've been starving for an answer because Jimmy, yes, did really well. Went under, he has a really good win-loss record as a 49er starter, but it wasn't always the sexiest stuff. It didn't have a big arm. He was limited in certain things. Was he limited because Kyle limited him? Kyle said that he's one of the better throwers on the planet. There's all these different things, and then we see what we see, right? But I think that the Niners just want the total package. The Niners fans want the total package, and I feel like Trey would be the closest thing to that total package, but we just haven't seen enough of Trey to get us there. And I don't know if we are going to see. I hope we do, but I really don't know if we are. And I said it wouldn't surprise me if Sam Darnold tries to make his way up. I mean, what else is he going to do? He got put in a crappy position right when he got drafted to he got drafted to the Jets.
Yeah.
Bad team. Went to the Panthers. They trade away everybody. They're a shit show, right? So it's like,
yeah.
Fire
and
the
neither
coach.
one of
So
those
it's like,
coaches are in the NFL anymore.
Exactly.
Coaching quarterbacks.
So has he really had a fair shot? I think that Sam Darnold's a good thrower of the football. He was at USC. USC was not as good when Sam Darnold was there as they are right now. I think a lot of people would agree. The offense under Clay Helton was not as sexy as it is under Lincoln Riley. So I feel like he's been put in these predicaments that he's had to be the superstar. And all this pressure is on him as a quarterback since college because USC needed him to be that. The Jets needed him to be that. The Panthers were starving for it, right? And now he's with the Niners, and you're like, well, the kid, yeah, here's Chris. The kid now has a supporting cast. He's got an offensive-minded coach. He's got a guy that's done things with quarterbacks that other people probably didn't think he was going to do. Look what he did with Brock Purdy. Look what he did with Jimmy G. Look what he's done so far. I mean, what we've seen with Trey, they've done some good things offensively from what we've seen, but there hasn't been enough of it. So I'm intrigued, honestly. I know a lot of people are going to say, hey, Sam Darnold's not the answer. I'm not saying he is, but I'd say we're in the same position, or realistically speaking, asking you two, are the Niners any better at the quarterback position right now? Are they in a better spot right now than they were at this time last year?
Yeah, I would say yes, in that they've seen one of their quarterbacks play well.
Well, they had Jimmy Garoppolo this time last year, so you
hurt.
saw him play well.
Yeah, well, so Brock's cheaper, and I would say Brock played better in his stretch than Jimmy did in any of his stretches. So, and look, and a lot of people will take this as, anti-Brock Purdy. I just
Croc looked like he didn't like that. He wanted to say something. There was a rebuttal coming.
Wasn't Croc the one that was disrespecting Jimmy on his podcast like last week, Greg?
No.
Do you remember?
He's always disrespecting. Ever since I got fired from Croc's podcast, I just don't even listen anymore, honestly.
Don't listen to Greg, y'all.
So like, honestly, the whole Jimmy and Brock conversation, I thought was like, it was fun to watch. I think it was like it's the hot new thing, right? And it's the new pretty girl that's showing up, and then after a while, you're like, okay, like we've seen enough, right? Yep. I feel like that was kind of Brock Purdy. And I think that's the fear that people have. It's like, well, we got to see it, and the Niners are winning, and Jimmy did good. Jimmy was having arguably his best season. He gets hurt. Brock comes in. You're like, oh, this is nice. This is refreshing. We see a little scrambling. We see some off-platform stuff. But then you look at the stat lines at the end of the game. You're like, oh, it's the same thing we've been seeing for the last 4 years anyways. So how much better is it really, or is it just cuter right now?
Greg said it, not me, so y'all don't bash me in the comments or anything like that.
On tape, it looked better to me. And, like, that's the thing is, like, I like what I saw from Brock Purdy. If Brock Purdy's the best guy and he's the guy, I'm with it. Let's go with Brock Purdy. I just want to see the Trey thing through just in case. And then we'll know. It's like, okay, Trey wasn't the guy. Brock's the guy. We'll see if, maybe a lack of arm strength and some balls floating. And if he misses, there's some throws he can't make. We'll see if it even matters, because last year it didn't matter. And so that's what we'll find out with Brock Purdy. I love what I saw from Brock Purdy. Just want to see it through with Trey a little bit longer.
No, I agree with you. You have to. With everything that you gave up for him, I feel like you have to. Otherwise, you should have traded him. I mean, you would have taken a huge loss on it, but you should have traded him. Because I saw today that they're saying that the Niners or the front office is adamant that Brock is going to be the starter when he comes back in September. They said that one of the people on NFL Network had said it earlier. And it's like, well, okay, like I can see it, but why not just have this thing be a full-blown competition? And if he's not going to be ready till September anyways, how do you know you're going to get the same thrower of the football come September?
Yeah, don't rush it. And that's I want to do the audio version of this podcast, by the way, is going to be a little bit shorter. So you're getting a little bonus footage here. If you're watching this on YouTube, make sure you're subscribed up, hit the thumbs up, and hit the notification bell so you know when we're on YouTube and you know when we're going live. That's the other thing I wanted to ask you about here as it pertains to Brock Purdy. Greg, have you dealt with anybody coming off an elbow injury like that, UCL injury? What have you seen from some injuries like this, and how quick do guys come back? How quick do they bounce back to how they were throwing? And do you ever see guys throwing even better than they were before?
I knock on wood. Hopefully I don't have to deal with any. There was the Josh injury this year, the LCL injury where, it was, I don't know if it was like the sprain. He said he was fine, right? But he's always going to say he could have it hanging off of his body and he's still going to say he's fine because he's a competitor. I've dealt with some of the baseball guys at our facility that have done it. It's usually a long process. It's pretty strenuous. The recovery part of it and watching those guys go through I'm talking baby throws of like 5 yards with a baseball and then 10 yards. It looks painful to start out. It's not, I wouldn't want to deal with it. And it's the same. I did my knee, ACL, MCL, meniscus, and I was very aware mentally. It was always kind of in the back of my head for probably 3 or 4 years thereafter I did it. Just like the thoughts of, what if it happens again? Or if I do too much and cut the wrong way, is it going to happen again? So I would think that that's probably going to happen mentally. If he throws it too hard, is something going to happen with his arm, starting out for the first 3 or 4 months, or 5 months of that recovery until he can really go fully at it. So I can imagine mentally that he's probably going through it and he's curious on how it's going to happen. I know Jimmy, right? Jimmy had the arm injury or the shoulder injury. And I told Crocker last year, I'm like, shoot, I think that Jimmy's throwing the ball harder than he's ever thrown it now. And it looked like that during training camp. It was like the Henry Roland Gardner thing where all of a sudden he's just got it. He's whipping the ball around the field. So that's kind of how I felt. There's some people that I know there's obviously other NFL guys that I'm sure you guys have talked about where they went and had the surgery and they've come back and said they were better throwers than ever. So I think it is a possibility. You're going to rehab your arm and you're going to do different things with your arm and exercises that are going to strengthen it that would probably allow you to be a better thrower overall. So it wouldn't surprise me, but to say, is he going to have a gun like Trey Lance? No, probably not, unless he's just a magician with a football, but I would doubt it.
And he definitely can't go the other way too, because we talked about that extra 5 miles per hour he gained from the scouting report that Croc read to what we saw. Maybe he was throwing the ball a little bit better than he did in college and helped him play up a little bit. And obviously he's got some playmaking ability. He came in, it wasn't too big for him. He did whatever Kyle Shanahan told him to do, which I think Kyle Shanahan loves in a quarterback, which is why Kyle's like, maybe I did find my guy. So we'll find out. It's going to be a fascinating situation. I'm kind of glad Brock can't play this summer at camp early, or at least won't be a full participant. It doesn't look like in camp. And we'll get to see Trey kind of run the show. Like, okay, is he different? Is this Trey Lance 2.0? Is he running the team? Is he a leader? Is he in charge? Is he looking better? Is he in full control? Because then things will get serious. And then if he's not that guy, Brock gets back, he's healthy. And I think the decision will be a lot easier for Kyle and everybody involved.
Or is it going to be that easy with Sam Darnold on the roster?
Look, no, he's breaking case of emergency. I have no expectations. I don't think Sam Darnold sees a clear picture out there. And look, maybe he could have been a great quarterback and got ruined, because I think that happens a lot in the NFL, being in bad situations. And I have no doubt he'll be in his best. The best Sam Darnold could be with the 49ers. And is that enough? Is that good enough to win some games over a stretch? Is he throwing less interceptions? Maybe, but I don't think he sees the picture as clear as Jimmy did. And Jimmy threw too many interceptions. So I don't know. It'll be really interesting. But I think for me, Sam Darnold is break in case of emergency. And I just get that vibe from him. I think a lot of people like him because he's a good dude, but I don't know if he seems like he doesn't care that. He's
very low key, huh? He kind of just has
I don't want to say he doesn't care or anything like that, but just I don't know. He's not like that guy who's ready to cut somebody's throat if he doesn't get the starting job. I just feel like he's kind of like laid back, and he's a guy that people like, and he's got some talent. So it's like, let's see what we got in Sam Darnold.
He comes off as that. I think if you were to be sitting next to him, he would probably say, dude, there's no way this guy that can't play 3 straight games and this other guy that's coming back from his elbow falling off is going to beat me out. Like, that's probably most just people that have any type of competitiveness in them are thinking more so along those lines. Like, that's what he should be thinking. I'm not saying that's how Trey's thinking, that's how Kyle's thinking, that's how Purdy's thinking. But if I'm Sam Darnold, it's like, you guys threw me in a situation to where now I got George Kittle, Debo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, Christian McCaffrey, Juwan Jennings, Kyle Juszczyk, Barry McLeod, Kyle Shanahan calling the plays. And this is the best situation I've been in. And you think I'm going to let these guys beat me out? That's what his mindset, that's what it should be. And I bet if you were to talk to him in private, it would probably sound more like that than, I just want to learn the playbook and, do my best out there and do whatever Kyle needs me to do. And he's talking to his buddies like,
Do you anticipate him pressing the other guys in?
Do I anticipate it? Well, all I can kind of go off of is he's just been a bad NFL quarterback with some splashy plays.
You can be as confident as you want, but if you roll out there and you're playing against 11 defenders plus 3 other ghosts, it's not going to turn out well for you. That's what worries me about Sam Darnold is, what kind of picture did you see? By the way, your guy Josh Allen, I saw a YouTube video of Josh Allen playing golf with Sam Darnold, and I believe Kyle Allen was there as well. Yep. And they're doing like this,
the Bob Does Sports thing.
Yeah, Bob Does Sports. That's what it was. It was pretty funny to see those guys out there. And Josh, it looks like he could smash the hell out of a golf ball too. I mean, that guy's a monster.
Yeah. No, he can.
You're looking at his caddy.
Yeah, I caddied for him in Tahoe a couple of years ago. But I played golf with Josh early March. Him and Kyle down there at Josh's Country Club in Southern California, he can hit the hell out of the ball. He's got a lot of juice behind it. Kyle wasn't bad, but Josh is definitely a long ball hitter. Short game mistakes cost him. Usually, but no, he's a good golfer. He's not bad.
What's your handicap, Greg?
Right now, it's a 1.5.
Oh, dang. Okay, we're talking about a near scratch golfer over here. I didn't realize.
Yeah. He's always out there. I give him that.
Look, I could see how a mechanics guy would take to playing golf, dude, because we're talking about mechanics. It's the most maddening thing out there, and you don't have any leeway. That half a degree can really screw you.
Yeah, no, it's very similar. Lower half, right? You're using the ground for to create rotational force, and you're trying to have lag with your elbow, and it's very similar, throwing a football and being rotational. So, yeah, when I tore my ACL, obviously a lot of quarterbacks play golf, and I played golf with my roommate in college. He was a big-time golfer, so we were always competing, and I was shooting like high 80s in college. And then my last year of college, tore my ACL. And then at that rate, I was like, well, I know I'm going to be playing golf the rest of my life. So I started watching YouTube videos and just started practicing. And I didn't have a ton of money, so I just go to the range and hit balls for $10, $12. And then I eventually moved to San Jose, and I went to the range all the time there across from Levi's, where the driving range was and where the parking lot seems to be half the time now, and just got better and better. And eventually got down to like a 1.2 or something like that. But I haven't got to a scratch yet, so I'm on the hunt.
No, you get there. You still haven't reached prime golf age yet either.
That's true.
It's funny because quarterbacks, kickers, pitchers always make really good golfers, and then the hitters are hit and miss. Who's the worst golfers, Greg?
Receivers and defensive backs.
Yeah, DBs for sure.
I'm definitely not a good enough mover to be. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I've tried to hit the ball. I mean, I've gone to Top Golf, and I know how much work it takes to be good in golf, or at least what I think and what I hear, and just from how bad I am at it right now, that I just shy away from jumping in altogether because I'm very competitive. So once I start, I'm not stopping.
Yeah, if you get the bug, it's over.
Keep that thing going. I have to get like legit lessons, and
it's addicting.
We talk about Trey Lance, kind of reworking mechanics and things like that. I got to go to somebody that has to, hey, this is how you hit a golf ball.
Yeah, you're gonna have to break down from zero. But I would not be shocked at all if Frontline Sports in Arkansas all of a sudden has a golf simulator and a little golf net in there and be like, hey, wait, what happened? He's like, oh, Croc took up golf. So
yes, sir.
Break out of the corner. All right, we'll let you out of here, Greg. We did a little bonus coverage here on
it's all good.
The live YouTube channel. Appreciate all of your insight. And can you tell the folks out there that might have a prospective quarterback where to find you and get coached up?
Yeah, they can find me. Instagram is I'm probably the most active on Instagram. I get on Twitter, obviously, during the season and some stuff during the off season, but Instagram, it's just Greg or at Greg Panelli. And then the Twitter is at Greg_Panelli. So you can shoot me a message on either of those. If you know anybody that wants to come out, obviously we're in the Central Valley, and then I'm going to start doing some stuff in the Bay Area here pretty soon. But from Fresno to Modesto and then everything in between. And then I got guys that come from all over. So, and, one guy coming from Arkansas, Strand, is coming out from Arkansas in 2 weeks. Yeah. We got guys coming from all over.
Fantastic stuff. All right. Thanks, everybody, for making Locked On 49ers your first listen every single day. Make sure you are subscribed up on YouTube and everywhere you get your podcast. Croc and I back tomorrow right here. Locked On 49ers.
Subscribe to this video